Hello and welcome to Creation School Assemblies Online. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your homeschooling, or if you're back at school, you're enjoying time at school now. Today's topic is friendship. I hope you enjoy everything we prepared for you. Our topic is friendship, and we're going to start with a game. Do you know any famous friends from the Bible? Now, they may not be famous to you. You may have heard stories about them, either in books or in stories or cartoons maybe you watched. Let's see if any of these sound familiar. We've got Solomon, we've got Mary, we've got Jonathan, Job, Lot, Moses, Timothy, Ruth, Elisha, Elizabeth, Jesus. I've heard of that, of him. Lazarus, David, Paul, Aaron, Elijah, Bildad, Naomi, Queen Sheba, and Abraham. Some unusual names there, correct? Let's see if we can put them together. All of these have a friend. So there's 10 friendships here. So it's 20 people, but 10 friendships. So, Lucy, if we pick Solomon, who is a friend of Solomon here? We'll put them together. So I'm going to put Solomon here, and I'm going to put his friend next to Solomon. So who is a friend of Solomon's? Let's give a chance for you to answer. So who is a friend of Solomon?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, actually it is Queen Sheba. Solomon was a king as well. And Queen Sheba traveled to meet him and then was impressed by his wisdom and then stayed longer and became friends with Solomon. Okay. Right. Okay. How about Jonathan? Do you know who is a friend of Jonathan? You know who is Jonathan's friend, Lucy?
No.
It's David. You've heard of King David, yeah? And Jonathan was a prince himself. And they became friends before David became king. Okay. Now, how about Job? Do you know who was Job's friend? Do you know, Lucy?
No.
His name is Bildad. You don't meet many people called Bildad nowadays, do you? No. Names have changed since then. So we've got Bildad. Okay. Moses. You've heard of Moses. Lucy, who was Moses' friend?
I don't know.
It was Aaron. Aaron was also Moses' brother. It's a very famous friendship. Now, what about Ruth? Do you know who was Ruth's friend? Could it be Timothy, Elisha, Elizabeth, Jesus, Naomi, Lot, Paul, Elijah? Come on, you know the story, Lucy.
I don't remember.
It's Naomi. Naomi was a mom who had 2 sons who, when they grew up, they married, and one of them married Ruth, but then unfortunately they died. But instead of leaving Naomi, Ruth stayed with Naomi and traveled to Israel and started life there and looked after Naomi. Now, what about Timothy? Do you know who's Timothy's friend? This is New Testament, and it is Paul. Paul is one of the apostles. He's traveled so much with the gospel, and he was very famous in writing loads of letters. Timothy was much younger, but Paul started first encouraging Timothy, and then they became really close friends, to the point of we read in some of the letters of Paul where he says, I can't wait to see you. And I think that's a really good example of friendship, when you can't wait to see somebody. Now, what about Elijah? And this is the prophet who brought fire down from heavens. He is so famous. Do you know whether it was Mary, Lazarus, Jesus, Abraham, or Lot, or Elisha or Elizabeth? Do you know who is friends with Elijah? It's actually Elisha. Elisha was a younger prophet, and he came to get to know Elijah, and first to learn from him, and they became really close friends. Now, how about Jesus? got a few left here. We've got Elizabeth, Lot, Abraham, Mary, and Lazarus. Do you know who Jesus was friends with? Well, I hope Jesus was friends. Well, Jesus was friends with everybody, but this particular friend, you're right, is Lazarus. Lazarus was brother of Mary and Martha, and Lazarus wasn't very well, but Jesus was busy in various other places and quite a long way from where they lived, and he couldn't get to them straight away because he was busy. And when he found out that Lazarus actually died, he was so sorry about this. He traveled as fast as possible and came to see Mary and Martha, and then he resurrected Lazarus. That's a good friend to have. Now what about Mary? This is Jesus' mum. This is New Testament. Is it Elizabeth, Lot, or Abraham? Well, if you know, Abraham is Old Testament, so it must be somebody else. You're right. It's Elizabeth. Elizabeth was Mary's cousin. And when Mary found out that she was pregnant with Jesus, she was so excited she wanted to see her cousin. And she went and stayed with Elizabeth for quite a while. And then we've got just two left. We've got Abraham and we've got Lot. Abraham is a very famous character from the Old Testament, and his nephew Lot was a member of the family, but Abraham loved Lot. And when they separated to go their different ways and have families in different parts of the, well, not too far away, but far enough, Abraham stood up for Lot and looked out for Lot and helped him a lot. A lot? Lot? Okay, I hope you did well. I hope you managed to guess at least some of them. So today's topic is friendship. Do you know when God created the earth, He created things in 6 days. On the seventh day He rested. And everything He's created, it was good. He said at the end of creation, it was good. But that story in Genesis, there's only one thing that's not good. Because and God Himself says, did you know that? There was something that wasn't quite good. Do you know what it was? When He created Adam, shortly after He said, it's not good for the man to be alone. He realized that Adam needed a friend, somebody close, somebody to share things with. And at that time He created Eve to be his wife, to share things. And you know what? I am married and I have a husband and he's lovely, and to me he is my best friend. But sometimes our friends can be outside of our families as well as inside. So maybe some of your brothers and sisters can be your best friends. Maybe some of your family can be best friends. But a lot of the times it's people outside of families, because we can choose. And there are so many people we meet in schools or at work, on playgrounds and various other opportunities. I want to show you something. I hope you like experiments. So I've got a bottle here. It's an empty bottle from olive oil. Doesn't really matter, it can be any bottle. And there's a friendly face on it. And I've got this balloon with a friendly face. Now they're very different things, aren't they? So an empty bottle of olive oil and a balloon decided to be friends. They're very different things. And sometimes they can be filled with different instances as well. So I've got some white vinegar here. So I've got a towel here to protect. So I'm going to pour a little bit of white vinegar. Okay, and there we go. And then with the balloon, I'm going to create a funnel using a piece of paper. It'll be a funnel that I'm going to use to pour something in. So one will be something inside wet and something dry. Have you ever filled a balloon maybe with some sand to create a stress ball? Yeah. We've got a balloon and then we've got a bottle. There's white vinegar in this, and then there's a bicarb, soda bicarbonate on this. So they are friends. It doesn't really matter how different they are. And I'm sure you have friends who are very different to you, but that's great. And sometimes you're probably thinking, gosh, she or he is so different to me. But you know what? It's excellent when we are different, because we can contribute something to each other and help each other grow and perhaps notice things. It's one of the things of friendships, to encourage each other and to help each other. And if we all were good at something, then perhaps we will be more in competition with each other. But if we are all different, then perhaps I can notice, oh, you're struggling with this, I can help you. And then the other way around, this person can help me with something I struggle with. And so, this balloon that's filled with bicarb and this bottle that's filled with the white vinegar, they are very different. But then if you mix, sometimes you can create something quite amazing. Now this is a chemical reaction. It's carbon dioxide that's just created itself. And if you notice, the balloon was flat. And there was just white vinegar in a bottle and a bicarb in a balloon. But the mixed reaction created a gas called carbon dioxide. And it filled the balloon. It created something completely different. It wasn't there before. And you know, sometimes our friendships can be like that. They can create something that wasn't there in the first place. Something good. To encourage others, to make each other smile. You know, laughter is so great because we can make the world better. We can smile and help each other get along. But there we go. The balloon I didn't have to blow. It was the gas that was produced from mixing two ingredients. So what kind of character do you need to have to be a good friend? And what kind of things you need to look out in a person to have a good friend? You know, there are loads of things that a good friend has. For example, you need to have fun with somebody. You need to be able to share things. You need to be similar in some things, but not too many things, because you need to be different as well, because you contribute and help each other. You need to develop and help somebody sometimes to become a better person, and that's also a good friend. There are so many good things about being a friend and being friends with someone. But let me give you 7 examples of good traits of character that a friend needs to have. So perhaps you need to have those kind of traits and develop those traits. And also your friend needs to have as well. And develop them too. You know, when we look at those stories in the Bible about different friends, David and Jonathan, Ruth and Naomi, Mary and Elizabeth, Solomon and Queen Sheba, and Job and Bildad and many others, they all have a lot of things in common. And one of those things is faithfulness. In fact, that also resembles us and reminds us of God. As Christians, we believe God made us in His image. And because He made us in His image, there are things that we have that God has in the first place. For example, He is creative. He has created us in the first place. So we are creative too in many ways. You might like drawing, you might like playing and you're developing a strategy when you're playing football, for example. You might like designing things, you might like building things. All of that is creative and it's great stuff. You might also have other interests, and they all sometimes link into to each other. Well, one of the character traits of God is His faithfulness. He is faithful to us in what He promised to do. For example, He promised to never leave us nor forsake us. And that's a great promise. He promised to heal us when we come to Him for healing. He promised loads of amazing things, and He doesn't break His promise. God's faithfulness is one of the most important characters and one of the most important attributes of God. And that's the most beautiful. And that's one of the attributes that we have as well. For example, loyalty and faithfulness to your family. You help them and you support them, and your family supports you. Well, the same as that is it's similar in friendships. So in friendships, faithfulness is very important. And so in stories of friendships like Jonathan and David, that's a beautiful story of loyalty and friendship. Jonathan was the son of King Saul and David was already chosen to be the next king. So Saul knew that his days as a king are numbered, and Jonathan, as a prince, knew that he will never be a king. And so it's very interesting to notice that when Jonathan and David became friends, they became friends before David became king. Jonathan didn't get jealous or decide to revenge, thinking that I need to get rid of David because he's standing on my way to a throne. Like it happened many times with people who wanted to become kings and queens. However, Jonathan was such a good friend. He loved David, and David loved Jonathan.
Slapstick Theater, David and Jonathan. This is Jonathan.
Hey!
Who was the son of King Saul and a warrior in Israel's army. This is David,
Hey!
who would later become the king of Israel.
Alright?
After David defeated a great giant, he was brought before King Saul and he met Jonathan. They immediately became friends,
Yeah!
and Jonathan made a pact with David and showed him that by giving David his robe and weapons.
Oh, hang on.
From that time on, David was successful in all he did,
Oh!
and King Saul became jealous of David and very angry. Saul wanted his servants and Jonathan to get rid of David, but because Jonathan loved his friend David, he warned David of what his father was planning.
Oh,
Jonathan went to his father, King Saul, and talked him out of harming David.
okay.
For a time, David was safe from King Saul's plans,
Phew.
but not long after, the king's jealousy and anger came back, and he tried to kill David.
Whoa!
David got away, and his friend Jonathan came to help him.
Hang on, eh?
Jonathan tried again to talk his father out of hurting David,
No.
but now King Saul was convinced he needed David to be gone. Jonathan was angry and sad that his father would not let his friend go, and he knew that David would have to go into hiding and run from King Saul. Jonathan met David one last time, and the two cried and said their goodbyes. Jonathan told David to go in peace and that they had a special bond in God's name. Then David left and lived a life on the run from King Saul, and Jonathan returned to the town. Even though they were separated, the two were the best of friends and were an encouragement to one another.
Yeah!
Another important thing to remember, when you are a friend and you want to have friends and you want to remember to be a good friend, is keeping confidences. That means no gossiping. When your friend told you a secret and said, please don't tell anyone, you don't tell anyone unless it's very important for the safety of that person. But that usually comes in a good judgment because you know your friend may be hurt. And that is a very rare occasion. Gossiping is not profiting anybody, and keeping confidence is important. Again, the Bible speaks about that very strongly. Do not betray somebody's confidence. The person who trusted you it's very important. The other thing is important to remember is kindness and showing kindness to your friend. For example, friends don't carry out jokes and pranks too far. You know, sometimes it's important to remember to stop. Having fun a little bit is okay, but having fun too far, that might upset other people. Those people may have found it a bit too sensitive, and they may smile and laugh at a small joke, but if it carries on further, involving other people, pointing fingers and laughing and exposing that person, even if you think it's funny, that person might be hurt deep inside, and it might take a while for that person to get over it. So kindness is very important. Again, the Bible speaks very strongly about that. In fact, I'll open the Bible for this because it's important to remember. It's found in Proverbs again, and it's Proverbs, need to just find it. Okay, Proverbs 26. Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I was only joking. That's a very interesting comparison. Another thing to remember is generosity. You know, it's important to be generous. So if you have something that your friend doesn't have and your friend really needs it and you can spare it, it's a good idea to share. Bible speaks about, again, this very clearly. It says, if you have 2 coats and your neighbor doesn't have any, give that coat away. That's what it says. Now, I'm not saying that go and give your coat away, but it might be that in your lunchbox or is something else, or you've got 2 pens and your friend, for example, forgot a pen. So maybe good idea to share the pen or involve them in a game. That's generous as well. You might be playing a game with a few of your friends and then you see another friend coming by, and instead of ignoring them, pretending that you haven't seen them because you're already playing a game and you don't want to interrupt, it's kind and generous to invite them in. Another important trait of character is forgiveness. Sometimes we all say and do things in a wrong way, and sometimes we might upset somebody, or somebody can upset us. And it's important to remember to forgive, to be able to carry on with your friendship. It might be something that was said without thinking, or done without thinking, or even without intention of hurting you. And it's important to forgive. And sometimes that person is far too embarrassed. They might ask sorry, and we might still think, I'm not forgiving that person. But you know what? We need to remember that to be able to move on and to be friends with other people, we need to forgive. And if they said sorry, and they don't mean it, or they are really sorry for their actions, it's important to say, okay, and forgive. Our fallen nature says, don't get mad, get even. But Jesus said, we must forgive, not just once, not even just 7 times, but he said 70 times 7. How many is that? That's quite a lot of times. And I don't think Jesus meant 490 even, because it can be even more than that at times that you need to forgive somebody. He just meant you'd forgive without counting. Okay? It's important to forgive. We must be ready to forgive our friend and they us. Another great trait of character, and that's number 6, is bringing the best in each other by encouraging. We looked at the story of Moses and Aaron. For example, Moses was called to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. You may have heard the story of Prince of Egypt. That's Moses. But Moses was very shy. He could not speak. And you know what he did? He was worried that he will not be able to stand in front of Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to let people go. And so God suggested for Moses to make friends with his brother, Aaron. Aaron was Moses' brother that he didn't really know because Moses grew up somewhere else. And so Moses and Aaron is an example of friendship where Aaron helped Moses to stand up strong, to be encouraged, to be courageous, to be brave, to be able to prepare the speech and go to Pharaoh. So that's another friendship. And the number 7, telling the truth. You know, one of the hardest things to do with friendships is sometimes telling the truth. Somebody might say to you, how do I look? And you can see your friend might have something dirty on their cheek or something on their hair. And we think, oh, I don't want to upset my friend, that they're wearing maybe a dirty top or a dirty something. Oh, I think you've got something on your nose or on your cheek. Oh, I think something else on... You know what? Telling the truth is very important. Sometimes this is just small examples of truth. There might be bigger ones that you need to practice, but telling the truth is very important. Anyway, so it's 7 things. Number 1, faithful. Number 2, keeping confidences. No gossiping, no giving away somebody's secrets. Number 3, kindness. Number 4, generosity. Number 5, forgiveness. Number 6, bringing the best in each other by encouraging each other. And number 7, telling the truth. So go and check if you've been practicing any of this. And maybe you need to start practicing. I hope you enjoyed our chat about friendships. And I hope maybe it will make you think about what is it that I need to have to be a good friend. And I wonder if my friend has those character traits as well. Now I'd like to finish with a prayer. So how about we close our eyes, put our hands together, and we will pray about the things that we spoke about and about ourselves being a good friend. Father, thank you for blessing us with friendships. We thank you that when you created us, you knew that we will need people who will help us, who will support us, who will encourage us. And thank you, Lord, that you bless us with people around us from whom we can choose good friends and who can choose to be friends with us. Help us, Lord, to see good things in our friends and encourage our friends, to be faithful to our friends, to be loyal to them, to remember to keep confidences and not to gossip, to remember to be generous and to be loving, to be kind, to remember to forgive, to remember to encourage, and to remember, Lord, that you love us all and you want us to love each other. Help us to be good friends. In Jesus' name. Amen.